Tom Arnold's sister is incredibly famous in her own right, but not because she headed to Hollywood. Instead, Lori Arnold built an incredibly lucrative drug empire centered on her small hometown in Iowa. Here's the truth about Tom Arnold's drug lord sister. Lori Arnold began living a dangerously fast life when she was still a child. After an early childhood filled with church and good grades, Lori dropped out and began a descent into substance abuse that would define the rest of her life. After leaving the stable home life provided by her father and stepmother, Lori moved in with her mother. As reported by the Ottumwa Courier, by the time she was just 14 years old, she was a heavy drinker. That was a pretty eventful year for Lori, because it was also the first time she tried amphetamines, something she also did with her mother. As noted by the Des Moines Register, Lori also started actively dating when she was just 14. She began seeing a 23-year-old man, and her mother forced her to marry him when she was just 15 years old. Her famous brother Tom says this decision essentially ruined Lori's life. By the age of 16, Lori was divorced and deeply involved with drugs and alcohol, though she did go back to school for a year. She never finished, dropping out again when she was 17. Lori Arnold dropped out of high school for good when she was 17 years old, already a divorcee with a serious drug and alcohol habit. In his book Meth Land: The Death and Life of an American Small Town, author Nick Redding notes that when Arnold was 18 years old, she met her second husband, Floyd Stockdale. Arnold gave up her job working in a local bar, and the couple moved into a small cabin outside her hometown of Ottumwa, and Arnold soon gave birth to their son, Josh. Cut off from her friends at the bar and often left alone to take care of Josh, Arnold soon felt extremely isolated and became very depressed. Stockdale was a heavy drinker and routinely became violent when he got drunk, beating Lori badly on several occasions. The Ottumwa Courier reports that it was Lori Arnold's new brother-in-law who introduced her to methamphetamine for the first time. For someone as depressed and unhappy as Lori Arnold, it was irresistible. Lori Arnold was just 18 years old when she married Floyd Stockdale and became pregnant with his son. Stockdale was 37 years old and had just retired as president of the biker gang known as the Grim Reapers. And it's just as Sons of Anarchy as it sounds. As reported in Methland, although Stockdale had retired as the club's president, he was still a member and still kept up his criminal lifestyle, dealing cocaine in Iowa and maintaining his ties with the Grim Reapers. As noted by The Fix, Stockdale brought something else to the marriage: meth connections. Stockdale had a link to a large methamphetamine lab in Southern California, where the meth trade was largely centered at the time. After being introduced to meth by her brother-in-law, Arnold brought some back home with her after a trip out to California with Stockdale and introduced it to all of her friends in Iowa. Unsurprisingly, for one of the most addictive substances on the planet, the drug was a huge hit. And before long, she started selling meth through a local bar. Her husband's biker gang connections helped establish her supply chains, and almost overnight, she was doing serious business selling meth. Methamphetamine isn't just highly addictive. It's also relatively easy and cheap to manufacture, as long as you know what you're doing and have a decent lab to work with. As Methland tells us, when Lori Arnold started her meth business in Iowa, she was buying her drugs from the Amezcua brothers, known as the California Kings of Crank. But meth took off so fast in the Midwestern United States that Arnold was soon outstripping her supply. Her solution was to start making her own meth, and she had a brilliant idea for doing so. She buried an old trailer on the grounds of the horse ranch she'd bought to launder some of her money and set up a world-class meth lab inside it, hidden from prying eyes. Remarkably, the Amezcua brothers weren't upset about Arnold setting up her own supply chain. In fact, they loaned her their chemist, who trained Arnold's people in making high-quality meth. With her own super lab, Lori Arnold went full Breaking Bad and was soon capable of producing about 10 pounds of meth every 48 hours, worth up to $145,000 per batch. She flooded the area with so much meth, she's often single-handedly blamed for the epidemic of meth addiction that swept the Midwest in the 1980s and 1990s. The illegal drug trade is a cash business, and dealing with all that cash can be a logistical nightmare, and no one knows that more than Lori Arnold. As reported by The Sun, at the height of her meth empire, Arnold was earning about $1.2 million a month, or about $300,000 a week. Since all of that money came in as cash, she soon found it very challenging to deal with. The Fix reports that she usually walked around with about $100,000 in her purse, as one does, and even tried hiding cash in the walls of her house. Like many other high-level drug dealers, Arnold quickly realized she had to find a way to launder her money and transform that dirty cash into nice, clean assets. Methland details her attempts to do so, which included buying a car dealership, a bar, several other local businesses, 14 houses in the Ottumwa area, a 144-acre horse farm, and 52 racehorses, and hired the trainers, groomers, veterinarians, and jockeys required to care for them. There was no thought towards making any of these purchases profitable. The sole goal was to hide the fountain of cash pouring into Lori Arnold's life on a daily basis. If you're wondering how a woman who never completed high school and who had a serious drug addiction of her own managed to build a multi-million-dollar drug empire, there are two simple explanations. First, as noted by Methland, a depressed economy in Arnold's hometown of Ottumwa, Iowa, meant the local police had seen shrinking budgets and manpower for years. The local authorities were simply not in any way equipped to deal with a massive operation like Arnold's, and that gave her the freedom to operate more or less openly. Second, the depressed economy affected more than the police. The local meatpacking plant, Cargill, had not only eliminated a lot of jobs, by 1987, they'd reduced their wages from $18 an hour to just $5.60 an hour, with no benefits. As the Fix points out, with the meatpacking and railroad jobs gone and many farms going into bankruptcy, that left Arnold as the largest employer in the region. Put simply, part of her success stemmed from the economic desperation of people who didn't have many other options when it came to making a living. Unfortunately for Arnold, her own drug addiction and success went to her head, and she got lazy, flaunting her ill-gotten gains and making little effort to hide where it came from. Considering the amount of drugs she was selling, the amount of money she was earning, and the lack of effort she put into covering her illegal tracks, the only real surprise is that she operated for so many years before federal agencies got involved. Methland explains that one reason it took so long was due to the Drug Enforcement Agency's view of meth. For years, they regarded it as a minor problem, mainly pushed by biker gangs and not affecting mainstream communities. That allowed Arnold to grow her empire under the radar for years. But once the DEA realized how the meth business was changing, things moved quickly. And in 1990, Lori Arnold's horse ranch was raided by the FBI, the DEA, and the ATF. She was arrested, along with her husband, Floyd Stockdale, and was charged and eventually convicted of multiple counts of drug trafficking, money laundering, and several other offenses. You might think that serving time in prison for a variety of drug-related charges would make a person reconsider their life choices. But that wasn't really the case with Lori Arnold. As noted by Methland, Arnold served 8 years of a 10-year sentence and emerged from prison in 1999. Her son had been 7 when she'd been arrested and was now 15 years old. Instead of taking a new path in life, Arnold lost little time getting right back into the meth business, which had grown even larger and more profitable while she'd been inside. To be fair, the Fix points out she did take a job at the Cargill meatpacking plant, working as a butcher, but this attempt to go straight may have been more about market research than anything else. While working at Cargill, she observed that her coworkers, many of whom were likely former customers of hers, were using low-quality meth to get through their workdays. Arnold saw an opportunity and set about making contact with new suppliers, the Mexican Mafia, a loose confederation of cartels and gangs south of the border. The high quality of what she was selling helped her to once again dominate the meth market. By 2001, she was once again making so much money, she had to buy new businesses to launder the money. A few years after being released from prison, where she served 8 years for charges stemming from her first meth empire, Lori Arnold had rebuilt her drug business. Arnold repeated more than her business model, however. She also repeated her mistakes. Number 1, as the St. Louis Post-Dispatch notes, she once again found herself drowning in cash. That problem led her to purchase a nightclub, a new house, and a fancy car to try and launder some of it. Number 2, she got careless. Just 2 years out of prison, it stands to reason all those purchases would be noticed by the wrong people. But Arnold was living the high life and not paying attention. In 2001, she sold 4 ounces of meth to a man who turned out to be an undercover cop, and she was arrested for the second time. Arnold went back to prison for 7 more years as a result, finally emerging in 2008 at the age of 47. In 2008, Lori Arnold was closing in on 50 years of age and had spent a total of 16 years of her life in prison. Though she'd made incredible amounts of money by selling meth, there was nothing left of her former empire. Arnold set about reclaiming her life and finally embracing a legal living. She married truck driver John Wooten and began repairing her relationship with her son, Josh. Going straight wasn't smooth sailing for Arnold, but she found her way. According to the Ottumwa Courier, today Arnold lives in Ohio with Wooten and works for an auto parts distribution company. It's the first time in her life she's had a regular job with things like a 401k or allotted vacation time. Arnold also says she doesn't go to bars anymore and lives a quiet life fishing and spending time with her family. You might think that someone who battled serious drug abuse issues, spent a significant time in jail, and lost millions of dollars would have a few regrets. Not Lori Arnold. She doesn't just look back fondly on her time as the queen of meth, she also doesn't apologize for what many see as the damage she's done. According to the Ottumwa Courier, Arnold doesn't regret her lifestyle of cooking, selling, and snorting meth, though she misses the money. And when she talks about her history of drug abuse, she's fairly positive about it.
Yeah, of course I had fun. You know, you have fun when you do drugs. That's why you do them.
Most disturbingly, The Fix reports that Arnold doesn't accept much responsibility for ruining the lives of her meth customers. She's quoted as saying, "I had some friends who got hooked on my meth, and they went down the tubes. Yeah, I probably ruined a few lives. Sometimes I feel guilty, but I made millions of dollars and I had a blast doing it." When confronted with the next generation of meth users who grew up under her shadow, Arnold still refuses to admit much guilt, saying, "Seeing them doing it makes me feel a little guilty, even though I didn't have anything to do with it. They were young when I got locked up, so it's not my fault." Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about the latest hot topics are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.